Hello?
Hello, Freddy.
What do you want from me now?
I want to see what your insides look
You
like.
know, this morning, I woke up with this feeling I didn't know how to deal with. And so I just decided to myself, I'd hide it to myself.
Are you even listening to me? Scream to review. Where is it?
I think I love you. I think I love you. Isn't that what life is made of? Although it worries me to say, I've never felt this way.
Scream to review, or else you're gonna feel my knife.
I think I love you, so what am I so afraid of? I'm afraid that I'm not sure of.
You should be afraid you're gonna end up like Derek after he sang that song.
Alright, Horror Hounds, and welcome to another episode of This Just In. Today we're going to be talking about Scream 2 from 1997. It was directed by Wes Craven and was originally written by Kevin Williamson. The script was leaked online, so there was some rewrites that were done by some other people. But Kevin Williamson kind of laid the groundwork for it all. Unfortunately, in the internet times, now we see the bad side of the internet because people leak scripts, everybody knows what's going to happen. Which I've never understood why you would want to read a script before the movie came out. I'd rather just watch the hard work and enjoy the movie versus knowing every single thing that's going to happen. Doesn't that kind of take away the fun and enjoyment of watching the movie? But to each their own. I mean, that's like people who watch spoiler reviews and then watch the movie afterwards. Sometimes people like to know what they're walking into, I guess. But anyways, this movie kicks off with Maureen and Steve going to the movies to watch Stab, which is a fictional movie based off of the Woodsboro murders, based off of the book written by Gale Weathers. So they go in, they get their popcorn, and they sit down. Steve gets up to go to the bathroom. When he goes in the bathroom, the the urinals are full. So he has to go in one of the stalls, and he hears some weird giggling, singing, humming sound. I don't know, some weird noises. And like every man does in the bathroom when they hear weird noises coming from the crapper next to them, he sticks his ear up to the wall so that he can hear these noises even better. And what he gets to hear is a blade coming right through. So he gets stabbed right in the side of the head. It looks like it's pretty much in the ear/temple-ish area. It's a pretty sharp blade. So he dies. And Ghostface puts on his suit, his little coat, and he goes and sits next to Maureen. So, kind of fishy. But in the beginning, he did say these tickets were given to him for free. That's why he was going to see this movie. And in the theater, everybody's dressed up as Ghostface. So it's a big premiere, and they've given out all these Ghostface costumes and all these little fake knives that are plastic, and they kind of glow in the dark. So it's pretty common for everybody wearing Ghostface stuff there, and everybody's hooting and hollering and having a very good time. But once a big kill scene is coming on the screen, which the movie for Stab was shot very similarly to what happened in Scream. So kudos to Gale Weathers for getting the book right. But when the big kill scene's coming on, Maureen can't really take what's happening, and she's leaning into her boyfriend all scared and feels her hands get kind of wet and looks and sees it's blood. And Ghostface stabs her in the stomach, and he's walking through the theater and just keeps stabbing her in the stomach, and everybody's going crazy because of the kill scene on screen. Say that 5 times fast. But anyways, so he's killing her, and everybody's not really noticing it until it's too late, and she's standing up in front of the entire movie, screams at the top of her lungs, and drops dead. So we cut to Sydney, and Sydney's in college now, Windsor College. And she's there. Randy has came off to college as well. And because of the new murders, we have Gale coming there to report on the murders. We also see Dewey come in because he wants to protect Sydney. And the entire gang from the original one is back together. And we have some new characters. You have Derek, the boyfriend. You have the best friend, which I don't remember her name. She's not a memorable character. We have the sorority girls who are trying to get Sydney to pledge and join the sorority. We have Mickey. Mickey is the other film student, just kind of like Randy was in the first one. Now we got 2 film students in this one who very much like movies. And then we have some local reporters who are very, very into Gale Weathers, is what I'll call it. But in this whole sequence of stuff when we're meeting people and then they're kind of introducing them all, we see Sydney has caller ID now. Randy's in class talking about sequels with the other kids in the class and how they're pretty much inferior. Mickey tries to say that no, sequels can be better, and they go through naming a bunch of them. My personal choice here, Child's Play 2, better than the original. The original's great, but Child's Play 2 knew what they had with Chucky, and they went balls to the wall and made it awesome. That would be my choice for a sequel better than the original. After that, we do get to see Randy talking with Sydney, and they kind of get interrupted by the new boyfriend. Randy's not a big fan because Randy's just a friend, and Randy wants to be more than a friend. But he's not. Then they find out about the murders and how it might be happening again, things like that. And we end up going to that night where there is a sorority party going on. Like I said, those sorority girls want to get Sydney to join. She doesn't want no part of it because who the fuck wants to join a sorority when you've already had a bunch of people around you get murdered once? And now there's people who have died recently, and it was during a showing of a movie about your life and the deaths around you. Probably not top priority. Just guessing. So while they're at this party, one girl stays behind named Cece at the house, and she gets some threatening phone calls. She gets chased by the killer. She throws some weapons at him, including a bicycle, downstairs at him. He ends up catching up to her, throwing her through kind of like a glass window, stabs her, and then tosses her off a balcony to her death. Everybody's excited. They leave the frat house party to go check that out. Then Ghostface calls Sydney, and we get a chase scene with Sydney. She ends up getting away. Her boyfriend runs in to go get the guy. And then Dewey runs in, and Dewey finds her boyfriend laying there with a big slice in his forearm. Very, very convenient location. And that's the end of that scene. So we get our first kind of chase scene. We get another death, so we're up to 3 already. Wonder if they will do more in this one. After that, we do see a scene of Randy and Dewey kind of talking about who they think the killer might be in a sense, and they're going over the rules. Rule number 1, there's always a higher body count. Rule number 2 is the kill scenes are much more elaborate, more carnage candy, which we all love. And then they're talking about potential suspects, and they name off a few people like Gale, and they can name off Mickey, but if Mickey's a suspect, then Randy's a suspect, and if Randy's a suspect, then Dewey's a suspect. So in the end, we end up getting absolutely nowheres. But we did see her 2 rules this time. Kind of setting up that sequel bait, which is always important. After that, we go to Sydney, who's not sure if she wants to do the play anymore. I don't really like the play setting. I think it's kind of hokey and stupid. But she's going to be this main star in a play, and when she's up there rehearsing, all these guys in these like brown hooded outfits who have kind of like a stone face or gargoyle-ish almost type masks. She ends up seeing a lot of ghost face masks instead because obviously everything that's happening. She ends up running away scared, and she runs into her boyfriend, and it sounds like she breaks up with him, kind of. I'm not positive if she does in that scene or not, but it sounds like it. So then we go out to the quad, and we have Dewey, Gale, Joel the cameraman, and Randy, and they're all kind of talking about who it could be, and then Joel's talking about how he read the book now, and after what happened to the last camera guy, he doesn't think he wants to be around anymore. and he leaves to go get some coffee. In this moment, Gale gets a phone call, and Randy answers it, and it's Ghostface. So Gale and Dewey go around tackling every student who has a cell phone, trying to figure out if one of them is Ghostface, while Randy stays on the phone. Randy's talking shit back and forth, and eventually pisses off the Ghostface person enough by telling him that Billy was a mama's boy little bitch. We see Randy get yanked into a news van and stabbed multiple times. When Gale comes up and opens the door because she sees blood dripping, they see Randy laying there covered in blood. So, first legacy character is dead. After this, we see Sydney in the library. She gets a nice threatening message from the killer, I'm guessing, about killing her. And then we see the cops. She has 2 bodyguards now. So we see these 2 cops going around looking at everybody's computers, and they leave Sydney completely alone, which is exactly what you do when someone's threatening to kill somebody. The person you're protecting, you leave by themselves. Smart. So Cotton Weary comes up and kind of corners her and keeps asking her about doing this Diane Sawyer's interview, and she doesn't want no part of it. And then he makes a big scene, gets arrested. Yet again, Sydney's putting him away. Nah, he gets to walk away free because there's no evidence of anything. But they've decided that Sydney needs to get moved to a safer place off of campus. And while that's happening, she runs into her boyfriend, and her boyfriend wants to say goodbye to her, Derek. She ends up leaving. He gets kidnapped. It's the frat guys. They're pissed because, if you remember at the beginning of this, I sang his little song. Well, a small portion of it. But after he sings that song, he gives her his letters, and supposedly that's a giant no-no in the fraternity hood. I wouldn't know. I'll take their word for it. So they take him and they hang him into that room where the play's going on in the theater. They hang him up on something and they booze him up, and they're tormenting him a little bit and everything else because he gave up his letters. In the meantime, we have Gale and Dewey are off. They take the cameraman's tapes to go see if they can find the killer. The cameraman, Joel, give him credit here, does the smartest decision ever in a horror movie, and he says, "Fuck this, I'm out." And he literally gets in a cab and leaves. Smart choice. Smart choice. Just get in a cab and leave. Then you can't die. But they end up going into the school and they find a place to watch tapes. And while they're watching the tapes, they kind of starting to get it on a little hot and heavy until they look at the screen and they see themselves as the ghost face is videotaping them and putting it on the screen for them on the projector. So then we see Dewey go after him. We see a nice little chase scene between Dewey and Gale. And Gale's doing all this running around and hiding. And at one point she's hiding in this one spot. And Dewey sees her and he's pounding on this soundproof glass. And then the killer comes up behind Dewey and stabs him. And Gale gets to see him spit out all his blood and drop to the ground. And Gale takes off. And the next person she sees is Cotton Weary with blood all over his hands. So she automatically assumes Cotton Weary is the killer this time. She runs outside and that friendly reporter who the whole time is kind of bugging Gale, wanting to be your friend and just been sitting around and poking around this whole time, she tells her Cotton Weary is the fucking killer. So then we head to Sydney and her in the vehicle with her best friend and the 2 bodyguards. And they're driving along. They come to a red light. And I don't remember this scene exactly. I just know that one of the cops, I think, gets punched and pulled out of the car. The other one gets stabbed. And maybe his throat slit. Maybe he gets thrown out of the vehicle and Ghostface gets in the drive. And the other cop that got thrown out once jumps on top of the hood. And he's shooting away. And Ghostface is driving all over the road and crashes into like a construction area, and this big metal pipe comes like flying through the back of the guy's head and out the front of his face. And that's the most inventive and the best kill in the entire movie. Because you see him laying there with it through his face and his body's still twitching and Ghostface is knocked out. So Sydney ends up prying down the plastic like gating to keep the people in the back from the people in the front, because that's usually where the people getting arrested go. She sneaks through there and she ends up sneaking over top of them in a very tense scene. And then her friend gets out, and as they start to walk away, Sydney says she wants to go back to see who it is. And when she goes back to see who it is, there's nobody there. She turns, she looks, and her ghost face jumps out and kills her friend. So, like I said, her friend's not very memorable in this movie. Sydney takes off running, and she winds up into the school, in the theater department. And she goes down and she sees her boyfriend hanging, because that's where the frat boys left him. And in this moment, Ghostface comes in and walks all the way down. And time for our big reveal. It was Mickey. And Mickey was a very surprising reveal in a sense, only because this movie is, I think, the longest. It's like just over 2 hours. And you hadn't seen Mickey for like the last hour of the movie. So it wasn't like anything you really did expect. And he's talking to Sydney and kind of going through the old spiel like they always do on how the movies made him do it. He couldn't help himself. The movies. And he tries convincing her that Derek was his partner in crime and she can't really choose. And eventually Mickey shoots Derek right in the heart. And they kind of have their own back and forth, and they're fighting a little bit. And then the door opens up, and Mickey goes, "So here's my real partner." And Gale comes through. That's right, Gale Weathers. The second. Nope, never mind. She's being followed by that nagging reporter who bugged her the whole time, which Sydney reveals to us is Mrs. Loomis, Billy's mom. So Billy's mom is there to exact revenge. And they're going back and forth with the talking a little bit, and she kind of explains to Mickey how his plan is stupid, and she shoots Mickey dead. But in the meantime, he ends up getting one gunshot off and shoots Gale in the stomach, and she does a front flip and tumbles off stage. So here's where we get the big showdown between Sydney and Mrs. Loomis. And it's pretty good back and forth. Mrs. Loomis is very good casting choice for that role. She did a great job of projecting the mother who's scorned because of Sydney killing her son. But then Sydney also talks about how she ran out on him. You blame my mom for all this shit, but where were you for your son? What kind of mother does that? It's a good back and forth. Eventually Sydney does get kind of the upper hand, and she ends up sneaking off stage kind of, and then she's using all of the traps, which part of this is hokey and stupid. She like cuts down some stuff and these fake boulders fall, and then she hits the lights, and then the fire flames that are made out of paper come shooting up, and she's shaking the metal board there to make the thunder sounds and stuff. I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in that situation, but eventually she gets hit with a bunch of blocks and stuff like that, and then Sydney goes out there. Sydney's checking things out. Mrs. Loomis comes back and gets her, and in this mini struggle thing, Mrs. Loomis now has the knife to Sydney's throat, and Cotton Weary walks in, holding a gun. And Mrs. Loomis is trying to tell him, let me kill her. She ruined your life. And he's having a hard time going back and forth with this. And eventually he's like, boy, I bet that Diane Sawyer interview is looking pretty good right now, huh? And Sydney says, consider it done. And he shoots Mrs. Loomis right in the throat. And she falls down. As they're checking on her, Gale pops up. So Gale looking like she's going to be okay. Just bounced off her ribs, she said. How you know that? Beyond me. But then they talk about how this is usually the point where the killer comes back. And then we see Mickey pop up, and both Gale and Sydney blast him a bunch of times till he goes falling away. And then for good measure, Sydney shoots Mrs. Loomis directly in the forehead. And they're going to walk away. And in this whole walking away ending scene, Obviously, it's the paramedics come in, and Dewey's getting carted away. But that thumb comes up again, so Dewey's still alive. No dead Dewey this time. On top of that, they want to interview Sydney because she's a hero again, and she said, I was no hero. If you want to talk to a real hero, go talk to Cotton Weary over there. So Cotton Weary finally gets his 15 minutes of fame for saving Sydney's life in that moment. And end scene credits. Sydney's walking off to who the fuck knows where. She's just walking in a straight line off of the college campus. She has nobody. Her best friend is Gail at this point, who left in a van with Dewey going to the hospital. All of her friends are dead. Where she's going, nobody fucking knows. Alright, so my overall thoughts on this movie. Yes, there was, I believe, maybe 2 or 3 more kills in this one than the last one, so they did up the kills. The blood and stuff, I mean, there was some more. That one kill I talked about with the cop, that was probably the best one, but I wouldn't really call this Carnage Candy. I mean, Randy's kill was pretty good. The first kills to kick it off were pretty good, but they weren't better than Casey Becker and Steve. That Drew Barrymore kill is just iconic and probably like one of the most brutal or impactful in the entire series. So I wouldn't really give him anything on that one. Overall, the acting in this one was pretty good. I think it's Timothy Olyphant who plays Mickey. I like him as an actor. Does a great job in the role, even when he's trying to portray how crazy he is at the ending to save that whole reveal after he didn't get to do shit for half a movie. He does a really good job. Like I said, Mrs. Loomis does a good job. We do see most of the characters. They all do fine for what they're doing. Dewey and Gail's relationship goes from where Dewey's pissed because Gail made him seem like a doofus in her book to Gail really wants to get this person, and we get to see a budding romance start with them, which we kind of saw in the last one. So they have good chemistry. I think after this one, they get married in between part 2 and 3. So there was obviously some real chemistry there. Overall storyline, like I said, this one's convoluted in a sense. It's not bad. It's not like it's so crazy all over the place. It's just that it seems like so much of the same shit and so little is happening. So I find this to be one of the most boring stories. And the reveals to be kind of shitty. Just saying. I mean, first time watching it, I don't remember. This was 1997. So I was 9 years old. Couldn't tell you what I thought. But I can tell you, rewatching it now, yes, I mean, I know who the killers are, but Mickey is like the red heron. He says a couple of things. The last time we see him, he's dancing horribly in the cafeteria while Derek sings, and then we don't see him again until he takes the mask off. The only reason why you don't see it coming is because you forget the fucking character exists. They write him off like he's a nobody. And Billy's mom, pretending to be somebody else, but she keeps having these half-witted, kind of asshole-ish comments, you can kind of tell. But this one felt like it was just kind of shock for shock's sake. And I guess originally there was supposed to be 4 killers in this one instead of 2. But because of the script leaking, there was rewrites like crazy. And I feel like that's kind of the detriment to this one, is there's so many rewrites that it just kind of feels like a half-assed story. Which, it's still a good movie. I would still say it's good. But my overall thoughts on it is it's not anywhere near as strong as the first one. It sure as hell doesn't surpass it. And it doesn't really do what you would expect a Scream movie to do for the sequel. You would expect it to increase its stuff and get better. Or it to really play on those tropes. And it kind of feels like a half-asses it. That's just my personal opinion. So my overall rating on this movie is it's still fun. It's still a good movie. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. It's not terrible. That's not my least favorite of the franchise. As we go along this, you'll kind of see where I'm at on all these movies. But this one's definitely not the bottom. But it's not the crescendo that the first one is either. So, alright, guys, get ready for my next Scream review. I'll be doing Scream 3 next week. Until the next one, guys, don't forget to give me a like, subscribe, share this with anybody who might want to watch it. Hit the notification bell so you can see when my next review comes out. And until then, rest in peace.